Two. Hello, and this is Matt Woodrum with our Fatherhood Virtual Summit. This summit has been awesome so far. We've had so many great nuggets of wisdom, and this is a section of the summit that I have been waiting for. I've got four guys that I love and that I look up to. So Entrepreneurial Family Man, that's a podcast that you guys can go and check out. They talk about a little bit of everything from homeschooling to being a great dad to entrepreneurship. So for the benefit of anyone who's watching who doesn't know who you are, why don't you guys go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah, I'll start off. I mean, we are just four guys who are crazy about our lives. We love our kids, and we want to thrive in business. And we just have discussions every week. We've had about 50 podcast episodes out there right now just talking about that. You know, how do you become just a great husband? What can you do intentionally? How can you live well with your kids? And other ways to just really lean into being a great intentional business leader, but not sacrificing those kind of relationships. So I'll go first just to throw it out there. I'm Chris Niemeyer, entrepreneur. I have a couple of online travel companies, lead a team of employees there. And I've got a beautiful wife of 17 years and four kids, 9 and under. So we have zero time for boredom in our house, and we love it.
It's awesome.
I'll jump in here next.
Go ahead.
Marty, do you want to go?
No, you go ahead.
Right. So my name is Jamie Slingerland, and I hail from Franklin, Tennessee. And my wife and I, Ruthie, we've been married it'll be 16 years at the end of this month. So I got to make sure I don't get that anniversary. You know how it is when you miss the anniversary, right? You can get in big trouble. But we have 4 children, and we work from home. We homeschool. We have a couple different businesses that my wife and I are both life coaches, and we also have an Amazon business where we sell photography equipment. And we have a lot of stuff going on. It's like Niemeyer. There's zero room for boredom because we always have a party. There's always craziness going on here at the Slingerland home.
Awesome.
Well, I'll jump in next. Michael McGreevy from beautiful, sunny, luxurious Buffalo, New York. It's the blue-collar capital of the world up here. It's currently very chilly outside, but I live here with my gorgeous wife, Lydia. We've been married for 5 years, and we have 3 kids, 3 years old and under. Gunner, Skylar, and Asher. Our house is chaos right now. We have dirty diapers. I step in yams probably 3 times per day. And so it's all caked on the bottom of my feet. Even right now, if I looked at the bottom of my feet, there's probably 3 to 4 different kinds of baby food stuck in my toes. But I run a coaching business right here from my house. I have my office here at my home, and outside that office is beautiful chaos happening. And it's what I chose, and it's hard and awesome at the same time.
That's a good way to say it. It's hard and awesome at the same time. I'm Chris McCluskey. I am in South Central Missouri, the foothills of the Ozark Mountains, on our family farm, Dirt Road, and have worked from home for 20 years, married to my wife, Rachel, for 32 years. We have 7 kids. Oldest is 27, and they march down about every 2 to 3 years from each other until our youngest is 11 years old. I pretty much hit the spectrum except for wee tiny ones in terms of living under my roof. But I'm now a grandfather. I've got a newborn grandson, so absolutely all about fatherhood. Tickled to death to be here on the Fatherhood Summit. Hugely supportive of what you're doing here. Obviously, gigantic about just family, marriage. My wife and I run the primary business that we have, which is Professional Christian Coaching Institute. It's a coach training school, largest Christian school in the world, training coaches at a professional level to do exactly what we all do from home as professional coaches. But have several other companies as well and properties, and just always got my hand in entrepreneurial ventures. But all of it is because I'm so about family, and it gives us the flexibility to work from home, live wherever, travel wherever. We schooled all those 7 kids from home, and they're now, the older ones have launched their businesses that they run from home. So big about all the themes that we address on Entrepreneurial Family Man, and yeah, again, Matt, just tickled to be here for the Fatherhood Summit.
Thank you. Thank you for the kind words. And thank you guys for joining us. So let's go ahead and get right in. So one of the things that we talked about during this summit is how important faith is, having faith in not only ourselves as the work that we do and the confidence that we can bring and instill into our children, but also faith in something higher than ourselves, something that gives us that purpose, something that plugs into us and fills us up. As a Christian, I call that God and enjoying and loving the faith that I have in God. But having that faith in God has helped me to understand him as a dad, as a parent type figure. So I know a lot of you guys are great men of faith. How has that relationship with God improved your own parenting skills and improved your marriage?
I'm not one of those men of great faith, so I don't think I'm going to speak to this one. I'm still working on mine.
You're like a footnote in Hebrews, man. You're like in that men of faith thing. Come on.
Oh, man. I mean, I want it to be everything, Matt. I'll say that. That's my goal, but I'm just so far from that. I'm working on pursuing God, and there's days when I don't feel like he's anywhere near me at all. And then there's other days where I feel like he's walking right beside me. But when I look at my little kids and when I'm frustrated with them and angry at them, I mean, would I ever want anything bad for them? Would I ever want anything to go south for them? No. No matter how mad I am at them, I still love them and would do anything for them. And I'm convicted by that feeling because I know that's not how I always view God. And so how it's helped me is to look at my kids and say, wait a minute, God is a way better father than I am to my kids, and I love my kids no matter how frustrated I am with them. So he's got to be even well beyond what I can love my kids at that level. And so that helps me in certain moments when I feel like I am hearing God and I am walking with him.
Completely agree.
In the Judeo-Christian faith, God is called Abba. I mean, he has many names, but the name that I most identify with is Abba. That just means daddy. It is such an endearing term. It's not God, with the fire and the thunderbolts on the mountain far removed, and we are sinners in the hands of an angry God. It is, Daddy, crawl up in my lap. I'm going to read you a story, kind of a relationship. And so, Matt, I mean, it definitely speaks to all of us, to our understanding of what we're called to as fathers. And we really do view our role as fathers as a calling, something that we'll answer for, something that was entrusted to us, that we're to steward well. And so of many different things that come to mind, one of them is 3 primary tasks that I believe any father has from the Heavenly Father that we're going to be held accountable for, and that is providing, protecting, and preparing. It's nice that they have alliteration. You can remember them all with the P's there, but provider, protector, and preparer, one who helps them. Because, we want to just dote on them and love on them, but we've also got to equip them for the big wide world, for their transitions. So I find myself constantly throughout all these years of being a dad, reflecting on my limited understandings of my Heavenly Father, but how I experience him in relationship with me, and look to that for just a template. I wish it was a blueprint, but at least a template, something that I can draw from to try to fumble through and figure this thing out that we're tasked with.
Well, I'll jump in just because I have something like literally in my mind's eye right now. A moment almost 10 years ago to the week, I came home from the hospital and brought my firstborn, Jesse, and he was a few weeks early, and so we had a couple complications, but it was just days before Christmas, and I remember getting up in the middle of the night when he was just having a rough time, right, and trying to be that young dad of a 2 or 3 day old and trying to console him, and I remember walking back and forth, and I looked at the nativity scene that was right there on our shelf, and I was just thinking about, like, here I am, a brand new dad. I have no idea what I'm doing. Wish there was a blueprint as well. But I remember just stopping there and honestly starting to weep, just like, Lord, you love us so much that you sent that little baby into the world. I couldn't imagine anyone touching this little child of mine. Help me have that kind of love. And like these guys said, like Michael said, I mean, there's some days where I'm so far from that. I'm trying to lean into that. And I think as any man knows, leaning into this relationship that we have with our Father helps us become better fathers. So that's just something I go back to. And this Christmas season, looking at that literally right behind this door is that same nativity set. Just always a good reminder.
Well, I guess it's my turn. I'm the only one that hasn't said anything. Do I need to say? Move on to the next one. Man, well, I love all of your hearts. This is why I'm a part of the Entrepreneurial Family Man, to be around these awesome group of guys. For me, I think we talk about those 3 domains of entrepreneurship, family, and marriage, and I struggle probably the most being a dad than any of the other domains. I'm leaning into it, but in my own personal walk with the Lord, I think I've really had a big paradigm shift in the last couple of years, just really knowing, going from my head to my heart, the grace that God has for us. And I know that sometimes I'm really hard on myself and I need that grace. And like what Michael said, I have days where I feel like I've failed as a father because I'm not bringing that grace that God gives to us to my children. And so I'm looking forward to getting better in that area so that my kids can grow up and say, I learned about God's grace because of the way my dad had grace with me. And again, it's a challenge because more times than I want to admit, I'm hard on my children. And then when I go to God, he's just like what McCluskey said. He's like the papa or the dad. He's like, come on here and talk with me and fellowship. He's not got his finger on the trap door to make us suffer or go through pain. And so I have to say that whole transformation of taking that head knowledge of knowing God is that loving Father and has that grace for us and really having it penetrate my heart. That is the biggest challenge that I have as a dad. My wife's from Puerto Rico, so they call me Big Papi. So if you guys want to call me something besides Jamie, you can call me the Big Papi.
I love that. Love that. So, a lot of people, and the reason why I have the summit structured this way is because I believe faith is the most important thing. Once we have our faith and we have God where he belongs, the next thing it comes, and this isn't fatherhood, this isn't just, and whatever, but the next thing, the next priority as men needs to be our marriage. It needs to be the way that we treat our wife. It needs to be the way we look at her, the way we spend time with her. So what types of struggles have you guys seen men walk into when it comes to marriage, and what's the best way to fix those? So what are some different situations that you've seen men walk into when it comes to marriage, and what are some of the best ways to fix those?
I just spoke, so I'll continue the thread here because I could speak all day. But I would say that you'd have to give young married men a lobotomy in order to completely fix them. So I think it's totally – it was supposed to be funny. Obviously, it didn't land.
It was. I was laughing inside, man.
Oh, man. This is what I do. It's such a process that there's not like one easy fix. I think we'd probably all agree with this. But for me, it had to do with getting my own stuff together and feeling secure and getting my validation from the Lord instead of this new lady that I was enamored to. And so I know that's like a pretty generic answer to that, but I think we need to figure out what our identity is before we can really bring strength. And it's like what they say when you jump on the airplane, right? It's kind of a cliche, right? Like put your oxygen mask on before you help the other people. I think there is this thing in personal development where you can take care of yourself to become healthy so that you have strength to give to the people around you. And I was an epic failure early in my marriage in that regards, just having nothing to give because I was such a disaster myself.
Boy, so many things come to mind, but a picture is worth 1,000 words. And a picture I have from my own childhood, this family farm that we live on, Matt, it's from the farm that my mom grew up on when she was a little girl, sold out of the family for several decades, and my folks bought it back. So my father and my mother, who are both still living, are just up the little dirt road from us here. So we get to see my extended family on a regular basis. They've been very much a part of our children's lives. And yeah, there they are. But a picture that I hold from my childhood, because I experienced it so frequently, was of what in my family they called kitchen hugs. And this was Dad. Usually it would be as he was coming home from work, or maybe as he was heading off to work in the morning, that he and Mom would do a kitchen hug. And it was a very appropriate hug. It wasn't a sensuous sexual hug. It was a kitchen hug, but it was a long, lingering hug. He wrapped her up in his big arms. He was 6'2", and Mom was, 5'6" or so. And she'd just lose herself in there. And we kids would scurry as fast as we could to scoot right in the middle of that hug. We'd grab a leg and we'd just wiggle our way in there, because it was this incredible experiential space of love and security that started with the awareness Daddy loves Mommy and Mommy loves Daddy. And they are so secure in that we all get to just be like these sponges soaking it up. So I didn't have those cognitive thoughts when I was a child, but as I've reflected back on it, and as I've done kitchen hugs with my own wife and felt my kids squeezing that same space, I'm just aware that is a takeaway for a space that we as fathers need to create for our children in loving them well by demonstrably loving our wives well. They learn more about love and security through what they see with our interactions with Mommy than they do just from our interactions with them individually.
I love that, Chris. That's just a lot about that being caught, not taught, right? They are catching so much by watching how we interact with our wives. And I think just a simple question that men need to ask, especially these early young marrieds, is how am I being selfish? I wish I had been challenged on that early on. How am I being selfish? Because when you're joining two people, you've got to, you have times where you've got to die to yourself, right? I mean, we're told to love and serve our wives. And so, boy, that's just a key thing, guys. We know that we are wired to think about ourselves. And so when you're in this relationship, challenge yourself on that from time to time.
Man, I could talk about this subject for hours. I think there's so many ways that men come into marriage and screw it all up, myself included. I'll just speak to one of those things. I think one of them is the pain that you bring into your relationship. I think often guys, nobody gets through life without getting dinged with something or hurt or wounded in some way in life. But if at some point you're not working through that pain with other people outside your marriage, with a counselor, with a pastor, with somebody, if you're not getting that healing, at some point that's going to come bubbling up in your marriage and cause a major issue. And I just was fortunate. No one agreed to marry me until a little bit later in life. And so I got to make a lot of my mistakes in relationships before I got married. And I had this time where I really worked through a lot of my pain and my wounds. And man, I think about if I would have got married before I walked through some of these major things, I probably already would have screwed the thing up and probably wouldn't still be married. And so the takeaway on that is, what kind of pain do you have that you haven't looked at? You're not even willing to look at it because you've stuffed it away. You've moved on from that. No, that's old. Like it's not a big deal anymore, but you haven't really dealt with it. Bring it up, deal with it, like get some counseling, meet with somebody, get around some guys who really know you and you can be vulnerable with and you can open up with and start to walk through that stuff. Because if you don't, it's going to cause a dumpster fire in your marriage.
Wounded people wound people. They cannot not, because they're looking to fill something up that no other human, especially a wife, can fill. The wife will try harder than anybody else, but will just suck the life out of her and the joy and beauty out of our family. Yeah, I got to jump in and echo that, Michael. If it's there, and who among us doesn't have something like that? Own it and address it, whatever it takes. because it's not going to go away. And it ain't underground. It's being felt.
Yeah, very true. We've got a lot of men who are walking around who are hurting themselves, and they don't have that community of men that they can go up to. They don't have the mentors that they can go to and really deflate. Not that, they can't really let loose. And I love that, Michael, about what you said, and Chris, hurt people hurt people. It is impossible that if you're hurting and you're damaged inside, if you don't go and get the help that you need, you're never going to be able to become the father, the husband that you can be. And so I really appreciate those words of wisdom, Michael and Chris. So going right along with this marriage, what is the best piece of advice that you heard about marriage when you guys got married?
I'll jump right in. I think from John Eldridge, and this is a little bit of a piggyback on what Jamie said, but don't find your validation about who you are as a man and how you're doing exclusively from your wife. Meaning, don't go to her to feel strong or to feel your own value as a man. Because as much as she can be encouraging and build you up and make you feel great about yourself, what if she happens to be having a bad day or a bad week or a bad month and she's not doing that for you? So your value as a man rises and falls based on the mood that your wife is in. I've seen a lot of guys, including myself, get caught up in that, like almost to look to your wife to see how am I doing as a man. It's a dangerous thing to do, and I always remember that from John Eldridge.
Well, I hope we're all going to say something here, but it's a big question. Like, what the most valuable piece? I will share the piece that comes to my mind immediately, and it was from my father again. I was engaged to be married to Rachel, and it was probably the week of the wedding or darn close to it. He took me out golfing. He was playing incredibly badly. I was like, man, Dad's tense. What's wrong? And it was going to be another talk about the sexual piece of the relationship. Now, in my family, at least we did have those conversations. I'm so thankful for that. But the piece of advice he gave me, there were several on that particular golf outing, but one was, son, my advice to you with regard to the sexual relationship in your marriage is, at this point, any night but the wedding night. And I was like, what? Does that mean what I think it means? And he's like, yeah, I mean, just, I'm not saying don't have sex on your wedding, but know that going from 0 to 60 is not usually an easy thing for a woman. And, since he knew that the two of us had, at least in a literal sense of saved ourselves. All of us screw up in dating more than we'd like to have to admit, but having saved that and knowing that sexuality, especially for a woman, is incredibly complex, then to have this amazing day that is over the top. It's been everything that, particularly for our wives, their whole life is oriented around the day they're going to be a princess and walk the aisle and get married to, Prince Charming and the whole day. And all the families have been in it, all the tensions and all the drain, and you're exhausted. Now you're going to do something that most women have a fear kind of a response to. It's approach avoidance. He was just saying, essentially, a phrase that I have since used in the book my wife and I wrote, When Two Become One. And the phrase is that there's a world of difference between having sex and making love. And what he was saying was, what you're celebrating today in your marriage is the ability for the rest of your days to make love, grow love, express love, nurture it in all of its expressions in your family, sexual love being one of its expressions, and a beautiful one, and one that we very much look forward to, but it needs to be the outgrowth of all the other love. So when you have sealed that day and you're looking to consummate the marriage, if things don't work so well, which as a therapist, I can't tell you how many people came to me and said, it was on our wedding night, or it was on our honeymoon. I couldn't believe it. I was calling my mother from the hotel room because everything hurt, or, we had a huge fight or whatever. That piece of wisdom from my dad just, now, of course, we're talking to fathers, so presumably we're all having sexual relations with our families, with our wives, but be aware that there's a world of difference in the spirit of making love with our wives and just having sex. And guys get very focused on just having sex. It's completing an act or wanting to vary certain acts. And keeping that spirit of love, making, growing, nurturing, fostering, celebrating through the years of your marriage is one of the biggest values that my father poured into me. Yeah.
Nima, you can go. You can go after that. I'll go. I want a little buffer.
Well, yeah. Mine's easy and practical. I mean, it was basically, hey, put the toilet seat down. Come on. and here's how you do the toothpaste. So, no. In all seriousness, if I can be really vulnerable here, I did not have a lot of men in my life to give that kind of quality advice. Frankly, I was married at just turned 21, and so I was kind of going pretty blindly, and didn't have those kind of men to speak well. And but I do remember our pastor talking about how just like the love languages, right? And knowing that, really understanding what your wife's love language is. And I think for a lot of women, and kind of following up on what Chris has talked about here, I mean, we all hear about the crock pot and what we are, the microwave, in terms of that analogy. But affection, no matter if it's your love language for your particular life or not, affection is key, because just like we talked about earlier, your kids are going to catch and see what you do, how you treat your wife. And you want that example for your daughter in terms of how she should be looking for a man to treat her. And you're teaching your sons the same way. And so it's helpful. I mean, we're here in this dad summit, right? That's helpful for the entire family, the entire household, in terms of how you treat your wife. But yeah, don't forget the toilet seat too.
That's good. And the toilet seat, if you do what Nehemiah is saying, it'll help with what McCluskey was saying. It'll lead more to love.
Jamie's putting the toilet seat down. He's saying, "Honey, I'm making love to you right now."
I hear you. And there's we're a family of 6, and there's 2 ladies in the house. So I'm training my other boys to always put the seat down, and we do pretty good with that around our house. Probably like a lot of people, I'm not as old as McCluskey here from horse and buggy days, but we had a video of our wedding, and the first couple of years of our marriage, we watched that video over and over again. And our dear missionary friend, who has since died, he was a really close friend of the family and friends with Ruthie and I, and he married us on the beach in Puerto Rico. And he gave a sermon that he talked about that the 3-chord strand is not easily broken. And his theme of the message, which I had watched, remembering the actual day of our wedding, I was like a deer in the headlights. I don't really have a lot of recollection, but I did get the video, so that was good. But he talked about how you truly are better together being married. And I remember when things got really, really tough the first couple of years, and me and Ruthie were, me more so than her, being very, very selfish. And that message really kind of penetrated my mind that, all right, we are better together. Like, I know that is true, even though I don't feel it. And I think that was probably, it was right before we got married that George gave us that message that, remember when things get really, really bad, that you actually are better together. I think that message has really helped me in a lot of dark places when I was feeling selfish, feeling self-righteous, like I am right and you are wrong. And then it kind of shocked me out of my own brain, saying, no, like I am not the problem. Like, we are going to get through this if I look at us, what we bring together, the 2 of us individually coming together as one, that we really and truly are better together. It's a mindset shift. It really is. And if you had that in your mind, it'll come back to being the truth. And I thank God that George spoke that message that day. That's all I have to say about that.
That's great. I love that. I think that's completely true. You guys are all giving great advice. So going along with that, one of the things that I personally think is missing from today's world are great leaders. Great husbands that are leading, great husbands that are leading, great dads that are leading. And I say that because the world seems more divided today than ever before. I personally believe that great leadership, it starts within the home. It starts as with great dads implementing value and respect into their children, like what you guys were saying. They want to be the best, and they want to give the best. So what is the best way for dads to become great leaders within their home?
We could write a book about this one too, right?
You guys only gave me 45 minutes, so I'm trying to get as much crammed in, as much value as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I think often this self-sacrificing way of leadership is kind of put out there as the right thing to do often, especially in this personal growth space. Like, I'm going to waste myself in order to be everything to everybody else. I think that's where it goes south, is people fail then to lead themselves in the right way so they have something to give. And so I've learned that the hard way is I need to take care of myself, and I need to make sure that my heart and soul is being fed, and I'm growing, and I'm eating well, and I'm exercising, and I'm in an optimum space myself to be able to give to the people around me. And that's a little bit of a hurdle for some people, because it sounds maybe a little selfish when you first talk about it. I got to take care of myself so I can lead you guys well. But what's the alternative? I mean, you spin out, you're exhausted, and then you have nothing to give. So I'm starting to learn that myself, that it's key to take care of yourself in order to lead well.
Yeah, I'll jump in next quick. I'm always afraid to drop quotes from psychologists around McCluskey, but I think it was Carl Jung that talked about the greatest pain that children can have is when their mom and dad are not going after their dreams. And so it piggybacks on what McGreevy was saying about self-care, that if it's really true that more is caught than is taught, if we are not going after a life of passion and joy and, all the fruits of the Spirit and all the operating out of our giftedness, how can we expect our children to replicate? And it's very much like, I don't know, it's one of the Bernstein Bears or whatever, right? That says like, do as I say, not as I do, or something like that. It's like a joke in one of the books. But I think it really does go with what McGreevy is saying, is that I think, first of all, another point would be that if the marriage needs to be more important than the child rearing, is we need to go after and demonstrate what it's like in our own life to fulfill our passions, and also to have an amazing marriage if we want to have our kids to have one. So it's leading by example and operating out of a full cup, I think, is what I could boil it down to. I'm getting some nods from my friends, so I'm feeling a lot of affirmation right now.
Man, I don't know why you're nervous about psychology quotes with me, but when you can quote Carl Jung and the Berenstain Bears in the same philosophical statement, I'm like, boom,
nailed it.
That's a dad. That's a dad. Oh my gosh. Well, leadership. I think we better just stick with our theme here about so much of what is caught rather than just what is taught. It's not that we don't teach, but the teaching always comes from the children's experience of who we are and what we're about. And that will color even the most brilliant and wise of teachings if the vehicle through which it's coming is a messed up, tyrannical, self-serving kind of a man. In Christian circles, at least, we frequently hear references to a very misunderstood passage of Scripture in which the man as head of the household is being addressed. And I'll just, without going into a deep theological dive on it, I'll just say that word head for us in Western culture is often translated to mean boss or leader, like the top dog, the one who's in charge and going to finally make the decisions and set the charge, and everybody else is to get in line. And absolutely, you cannot plug that concept of headship into Christ's model for us. It doesn't fit. And so if you own that, then you look at it and say, well, what else could it mean? In our English language, we have a reference to a source of water, and that is the head waters. Head waters of a stream are the source from which the stream springs. And so here in the country, when you chase a little rivulet or something back to its headwaters, you're going back to the source. And if we as men come to understand that our role as leader is first to be the head, like the source of the family from which the rest of the family draws. Well, hey, if the headwaters are pure, guess what the stream's going to be? If the headwaters are polluted, guess what the rest of the stream's going to be? If it's got a bad taste to it, a bitter taste, if it's poisonous, whatever's going on in the headwaters, that's the rest of what the family is going to be drinking from, the wife and the children. So in that sense of source that the family draws from, the phrase that often rings in my ears is, if you want to gauge the measure of a man, look into his wife's eyes. You will see the kind of water she's drinking from his source, from his headship that he's providing, and you'll see it in the countenance of the children.
That's good, McCluskey.
Oh, did I get a boom?
You got a boom. You got to be like, I received the affirmation.
It's a virtual fist pump right there. That's right.
No, it's edifying, right? It's encouraging that.
And not to belabor, the point that I think we're all making, but it really is about being the head. And, Jamie referenced, and I was thinking about this image that we have caught from Dan Miller, a good friend of ours, talking about having a full cup and serving from an overflowing cup.
Yeah.
I just had this conversation with my kids the other day. I took the boys to the Y to go do some rock climbing and, do some just active stuff. Right. And we had a conversation on the way home because they're like, Dad, why do you like to work out? And I said, you know what? Some of my best days and honestly, as a person, but as a dad, my best days are when I have good exercise in the morning. There's a lot of good science behind that. When I'm in the Word, when I take some time to meditate and pray, when I eat healthy, like those things all, if that lines up, that's going to be a great day. I know it. And if you leave a couple of those off, it might be kind of a mediocre day. And
I
so
thought you were going to say sex, I thought you were going to say sex, Nehemiah, at the end of the day.
Well, yeah, that's from the night before. It's a carryover.
Kitchen hugs.
Kitchen hugs. Yeah. But we talked about all those things. Like, why do we eat healthy? We talked about that. We talked about why are we active? Why do we read Bible stories and pray together every night? What those kind of things. It's like they're seeing, again, back to the other analogy that Jamie shared earlier. We're put on an oxygen mask, and they're catching why we're doing that.
Yeah, great analogy, and you just shared a couple of the ways that we can develop ourselves. Of course, reading scripture, eating healthy, exercising, different things like that. In the last minute or so, I would love to hear how you guys personally pour into yourselves. What is it that you guys use to develop yourselves so that way you can pour into your family?
I was going to say trips to Cuba for me.
Yeah, adventure travel for Jamie, for sure.
Well, no, but we've done a lot of stuff together as a group, the Entrepreneurial Family Men. And I think, again, it goes back to more is caught than taught. Like, I want my kids to have really good relationships and socially and obviously in their marriages they're older. And so, again, for self-care for me, it's been having a band of brothers and getting to spend time with these guys. And I was joking around about Cuba, but we took this epic trip and it was just so life-giving. We sat around on balconies, we smoked some really good cigars and we just poured into each other. And I think that was a gift that these guys gave to me for my kids, even because I'm coming back from that trip with a lot more liquid in my cup to give to them, to pour back on them. But it does sound selfish, right? Like a bunch of guys just like getting together and go gallivanting through smoking cigars at the Hotel Nacional in Cuba together.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, Matt, because of course we know the quick answers of read the right books, go to the right conferences, get the latest on nutrition, the latest on exercise, all that kind of stuff. But if I'm thinking where the most leverage is, that's what Jamie's talking about. It's relationship. It's doing life together and being able to be real with a bunch of guys. And that's what we were created for. I mean, we'd love often to think that we can kind of sequester ourselves off and read all the right information and come out like Superman comes out of the phone booth. But it's just not the way we're designed, and it's not the way it works. We're meant to walk through life together, and that's where true strength comes from, I think.
Yeah, I'll echo that. I mean, no man is an island. There are so many other things you can do, but having these band of brothers on the screen here, the mastermind that we have together, the other mastermind we're part of, I mean, we get to do life and just raise each other up in so many different ways. And it's a place where, you can be yourself. You can have frank conversations. We share wins. We share struggles. Those are the ways that we get better. And that's how we can fill that cup up for each other.
Definitely. So I'll not restate anything, but I'll add a few. How about that?
Sounds good.
A recent podcast that I interviewed a gentleman on, he was talking about the free three. And these are things that whether money is tight or not, whether we're battling an incredible illness as I've gone through for years or whatever, if we can ensure that there's some measure of these three free things pouring into our souls, they do sustain us. And I think make it more likely that we'll elevate to more of the fullness of what we're capable of. And they are time in nature, music, either playing music or soaking up music, participating and just enjoying music. And I'm going to blank on the third one.
You're going to say sex?
No.
Kitchen hugs.
What's on your mind, Jamie?
Although that better be free, right? I had it right there, and I can't believe now that I've lost it. Nature, music, and laughter. Laughing. I was watching our family just 2 nights ago. We were cooking Christmas cookies in the kitchen, and Rachel had come home from a private retreat that she was on, and she was snapping towels at some of our older kids, and they were snapping back, and they had this big towel fight going on, and just the laughter as a family. Make sure that as a father and as a husband, all of you men, be sure that there is plenty of space made in your life for laughter and music and nature, those things that feed the soul. They call us out to a fullness of life, something much more than just functionally getting through.
That's great. Some great advice. See, Jamie was trying to give you the answer by making you laugh. So
I was.
That's what good friends are for, right?
That's right.
Jamie is a source of laughter on a lot of our episodes too. So
and a lot of it is coming at me, not with me. So why is it even funny, guys?
Well, guys, thank you so much for being willing to come and jump on here and share your guys' passion. I love seeing what you guys are doing. I love your guys' podcast. I love seeing trips that your guys' trip to Cuba. I saw those pictures and I just love seeing guys doing life together. And I think that's something that we need more of. So thank you guys so much for jumping on the summit. It is much appreciated.
That's a privilege.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Appreciate you, Matt.
And for anyone who's watching, definitely go and check out the Entrepreneurial Family Man. It's a podcast that's going to build you up. It's going to strengthen you. And they cover all sorts of different types of topics. If you want more information about wrestling with fatherhood, check out our website, www.fatherhood.com. Again, that's www.fatherhood.com. Thanks, and I hope you guys all have a great day.